now really focused on the developer point of view, like how do I change my build, what do I need to do there? And now we're going to take a different angle, and we're going to take a look at from the operations perspective, like how do these agents actually work, how to update them, what about scaling the agent pool, does this work in Kubernetes, how can I monitor the agent pool, is this even secure, how does this work, what about authentication, authorization, and so on. And we're going to try and answer all these questions. So running the distribution agent is actually pretty simple. Yeah, you just have to have some piece of infrastructure in your network that you can start it on. So you would give it a few parameters. You have to configure the server, the Gradle Enterprise server that you want to connect this to. And then for authentication, you will pass it in a registration key, which I will explain in a bit. And then you can also pass additional capabilities. So these capabilities are supposed to describe the environment the agent runs in, like it has Docker installed, for example, in this case, or Postgres as a database is available on this agent and can be used by tests. The agent itself comes in two flavors. So there will be a jar file and a Docker image. And yeah, it's basically a small application that runs on Java 11 or above. It requires a rather small amount of memory, so about 128 megabytes, and it runs on Windows, macOS, and Linux. So you can have different agents that run on each of these operating systems. And when it starts up, it detects the environment, so it detects the operating system it's running on. It detects the JDKs that are installed, so you can use all the JDKs that are available on that system, not just the one that runs the agent. So there's no direct correlation anyway. Yeah, and as I said, you can pass additional capabilities as command line parameters. And as far as updating is concerned, we don't expect that to be a big problem, because actually the Gradle plugin makes sure it's compatible with the agent by first sending a communication library that contains the whole protocol that the agent and the build need to talk via the distribution server. So that means that, yeah, an agent will have not just support for one version of the Gradle plugin, but basically many of them, yeah, because this component is not baked into the agent. There are, of course, a few security considerations you should be aware of. Since test distribution allows remote code execution inside your infrastructure, yeah, we require that the users that call this are authorized. So not just for anyone who can just, remote code execution does not sound like a light thing to have. So we require people to be authorized Gradle Enterprise users. And this is basically comparable to how CI job works. So if you have a CI agent and you run tests on that CI agent, you basically have the same issue. Those tests, they can do anything that you can do from your test code. Any files you can read from that VM that runs the tests, you can also read from the distribution agent. Yeah? So in that sense, it's very similar to a CI agent, and the same security considerations apply. Let me show you a bit more details about how builds have to authenticate and authorize themselves. So for authentication, we require that builds authenticate themselves with Gradle Enterprise access keys. If you have used authenticated build scans before, you might already know these. So this is a user-specific access key that you can generate. There are two ways to do so. Either you go to the UI that you can see on the left in the Gradle Enterprise server, and then generate a key, and then copy it and then store it in your local system. The other way is you run a specific Gradle or Maven task to provision such a key for you, which will open the browser and ask you for confirmation, and then store it locally on your machine so you can use it for subsequent builds. And this access key we will reuse basically as authentication mechanism also for distributed tests. And there are ways to inject that access key via an environment variable on CI, for example, into your builds. That's authentication, but that's not all. We also require authorization. That means that the user that is authorized using the access, authenticated using the access key, also has to have a specific Gradle Enterprise role, which is called distributed testing. And only users that have this role are allowed to run tests on the test distribution infrastructure. So that means you could also set this up in a way that you create a user for CI, give it an access key, and only give that user distributed testing privileges, this role in the Gradle Enterprise administration. So this can only be done by a Gradle Enterprise administrator, of course, right? And then in that way, you can really restrict who is allowed to use this feature. This was built. Agents also have to authenticate. This UI looks a bit similar to the user access keys, but in contrast, this is not a user-specific key. This is a key that's configured by the Gradle Enterprise administrator. So they have to log in, go to this UI and click on generate, and they get this full key. And then this is the key they have to configure their agents with, that they can pass this key to the Gradle Enterprise server to make sure that only authenticated agents can connect and be used on this Gradle Enterprise server. And of course, you can have multiple registration keys at the same time. You can use that to replace a registration key. You could give each agent its own registration key. You can revoke keys here that are no longer valid. And yeah, that kind of wraps up agent authentication. You will also be able to monitor agents and builds. So the agent sends regular updates of what it's doing to Gradle Enterprise so that administrators can monitor and scale the system. The admin dashboard is currently in development, so I can't show you that yet. It will show the connected agents and their status, like are they idle, are they doing work, what are they working on. It will show you the connected builds and the number of agents they have requested, or the number of agents that have already been assigned. You will be able to see the build queue length over time. That will help you to make an informed decision whether you need to scale up or down the number of agents.